There's an old story about the Greek marathon. Muscular conditioned runners paced nervously near the starting line for this long distance race. The time was near. They shook out their muscles, they inhaled deeply, and they put on their game faces. In the midst of it all, a young stranger took his place at the starting line. His physique was awesome. Taking no notice of the other contestants, he stared straight ahead. 2 prizes would be awarded to the winner of the marathon: a magnificent bouquet of flowers and the honor of standing beside the king until the conclusion of all the other contests that were going on that day. There seemed to be no question in the minds among the runners who was going to win the prize. And it's alleged that the stranger was offered money, a bribe, not to run. Someone else bribed him with property. He refused the offers, he toed the mark, and waited for the signal to run. And when the signal was given, he was the first away. At the finish line, he was the first to cross, well ahead of the rest of the contestants. When it was all done, someone asked this young man if he thought the flowers were worth as much as the money or the profit or the property that he had been offered. And he said, "I didn't run this race for the flowers. I ran so I could stand beside my king." Why are you a follower of Jesus Christ? Is it for earthly recognition? Or do you obey him so that when that race is finally over, you might stand victoriously by his side, by your king? That image might feed a need for recognition in you, but for myself, if I receive the privilege of being called beside my king for recognition, I don't think I'll even notice the crowds cheering on while it happens. I'll be so mesmerized with Jesus that my focus will be so tuned into him, I don't think I'll even hear the hearing of the crowd. As nice as that might be, because it will pale in comparison to seeing my Jesus face to face, and especially to hear him say, "Well done, my son. Well done." In the first 12 verses of John 15, you're not going to hear the word "hear" anywhere. Yet Jesus teaches us what hearing is all about, and that it's not complete unless we act on and obey what we hear. Let's begin today with verse 1 in John chapter 15. "I am the vine, I am the true vine, and my Father is the vineyard keeper. Every branch in me that does not produce fruit he removes, and he prunes every branch that produces fruit so that it will produce more fruit." Now, Jesus often uses farming stories because most of the people in his culture were farmers. If he were to walk the earth today, I'm quite sure he'd speak in terms of computers and technology and city life as well. Town and city dwellers may have never even given a thought of where grape juice or where wine or where any of that stuff comes from. I think most people know that both of these come from grapes, but many people who have never lived on a farm may have never seen a grapevine. If you have, what we tend to focus on is all those green leafy branches that yield the fruit. But underneath all that tangle of branches, there's a thick black stalk that goes down into the ground. That thick stalk is the vine. Now, would there be any grapes without the vine? All those branches that bear grapes get all their nourishment in and through that vine. The vine, and only the vine, is connected to the source of water and nutrients that make that vine strong and make the grapes produce and taste so well. Jesus pronounced, "I am the vine." Papa God's the vine dresser, or the grape farmer who tended to those vines. Now, there's a couple of ways to view the branches. Some people could say that those branches are only those who choose to follow Jesus, and others could say the branches represent every human being. I think the second part is true, that it represents everyone, and I think even verse 2 starts to tell us why. it tells us that every branch or every person not drawing its nourishment from Jesus, the vine, he cuts off and takes away to put on a burn pile. But those branches or people who bear fruit, who do draw nourishment from Jesus, the vine, will be pruned so that they can bear fruit more effectively. Now, you see, a grape plant left to itself, and it's not just grape plants, it's other trees and different things like that too. Most plants, if left to themselves, will use most of the nourishment that comes to them to make the plant increase. Shoots off this branch or shoot off that branch or whatever. The farmer, on the other hand, is more concerned about the fruit increasing and not the plant. He wants to maximize the fruit while the plant wants to maximize how big it gets itself. So what does the grape farmer do? He examines the plant, and in this case the vine, and he looks for the branches that are growing strong but aren't yielding any fruit. That branch serves no purpose other than to suck the life out of the rest of the plant. It robs it of its ability to produce the grapes. So the farmer cuts off those branches that aren't yielding fruit so that the plant can only send its nutrients into the branches that do yield fruit. The result? A lot more, a lot better, a lot higher quality, a lot bigger, a lot more fruit. But you might ask, doesn't cutting the branch off hurt the plant? Well, in the short term, yes. But they heal quickly and begin sending more of that life-giving sap into the branches that are bearing fruit so that they can do an even better job of doing it. Why does the Lord allow you and me to go through tests? In order to cut off the things in our life that are unfruitful or even destructive so that the good things in our lives can prosper. Might it hurt having those things purged from our lives? Oh, absolutely yes. But we heal quickly and become better, closer followers of Jesus because they are taken off of us. Let's move on. Verse 3. You are already clean because of the word that I've spoken to you. Remain in me and I in you. Just as a branch is unable to bear fruit by itself unless it remains on the vine, neither can you unless you remain in me. Now you see in the New Testament the words clean and unclean a lot of times referring to moral judgments on people. Clean is a word that they use to refer to things that the Jews were allowed to touch, to eat, things they were allowed to do. Unclean, on the other hand, were things they were supposed to avoid, stay away from, not even touch. If anyone did one of these unclean things, then the person was unclean until they could be ritually purified from it. This is clearly a picture of how sin makes us unclean until we ask God to forgive us and cleanse us from all that sin. Jesus said, you are clean because of the word that I've spoken to you. A person is clean before God not because of the mighty effort that he or she makes to be clean, but because of the word that Jesus has spoken to us, I forgive you. It's only by that declaration of God that we are forgiven, just as someone who offends you is not forgiven and cannot be forgiven until you grant them that forgiveness. Because forgiveness is a gift. It is not and it cannot be earned. Until a person that you have offended is willing to forgive you, you're not going to be forgiven by that person anyway, no matter how much you attempt to atone for what you've done. No matter how truly repentant you are. If that person refuses to grant you forgiveness from their standpoint, you're not forgiven. Forgiveness comes only from the will of the one who was offended. When you clean a chicken in order to eat it, you get rid of everything that you're not going to eat. The feet, the claws, the beak, the head, the feathers, and other parts that you're not going to eat. It's very much like a farmer cutting off the unproductive branches from that vine. The vine is cleansed so that it will bear much fruit. Now let me ask you a question. Does a vine only have to be pruned once in its lifetime? Or many times?
Many.
Yes, many times it has to be pruned. So you and I also must be pruned many times in order that we can bear the most fruit and the best fruit as we follow Jesus Christ. Now, your translation might say abide or remain or whatever, and that kind of gives us the idea of being in a house. However, the word used here actually has more of an idea of being connected to. So I offer this to you. Picture a garden hose. The hose carries life-giving water to the plants in that garden through the hose to the end at the far end. But if you don't have it connected to the spigot and turn on the source of water, nothing's going to come out the other end, is it? That's what Jesus means by abide in me. Be hooked up to Him and Him to you. Just as a hose can't carry water without being connected to the spigot, we can't grow in Christ without being closely and securely connected to Jesus Christ. Very simple concept, yet it's one that's easy for us to neglect or ignore. We must stay connected to Jesus Christ if we're to be fruitful believers. Verse 5 goes on to say, I am the vine, you are the branches. The one who remains in me and I in him produces much fruit, because you can do nothing without me. Now Jesus clarifies, he's talking about his followers here. But he has an important additional truth. We can do nothing of spiritual value unless we remain closely and securely connected to Jesus Christ. Have you ever been given an assignment of any kind, whether it was in school or whether it was in life, and you worked hard to complete it, looked at your work, you were happy with your work, only to bring the assignment back to the one that gave you the assignment, and they say, well, you did a good job with this, but that's not what we wanted you to do. How crushing. All that work for nothing. And it didn't serve what the other person wanted at all. When Jesus separates people as a shepherd separates sheep from goats, there's going to be many people crushed because they put such efforts into making themselves look good, only to find out that all that effort was worth nothing. Only when we do things that make Jesus look good do our good deeds last. Verse 6 continues, if anyone does not remain in me, he's thrown aside like a branch and withers. They gather them, throw them into the fire, and they are burned. Branches that are pruned from a vine soon dry up and die. The grape farmer throws them into a fire to burn them. A person who does not continue to be hooked up to Jesus, like that hose to the spigot, will be gathered, thrown into the fire, and burned. Is that saying that someone who does not follow Jesus and remain following Jesus will go to hell? Well, I'm afraid so. Is that narrow-minded? Well, even those who are against being narrow-minded are often narrow-minded. Aren't homosexuals narrow-minded about their lifestyle being okay?